And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/Cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate. And you see those sirens in your feed. You know exactly what that means. Well, okay, we got a lot to do. All right, we are going to do our big game breakdown because this is, as we promised, our big game breakdown show for rivalry week. Going to get it to you a little bit early. Locks coming on Wednesday, but I did it. I'm not proud of my powers, but yeah, I guess we just come on, Mel Tucker. Mack Brown is out at UNC. He will coach the regular season finale against NC State. He will coach the bowl game. He will not return for the 2025 season. North Carolina, power conference job now open. News breaks on Tuesday morning. It comes after... about a week ago, we get the reporting that he is telling everybody else he intends to return. If I remember correctly, I said I would too. Then, on Monday, he's coming out at the press availability saying, yeah, I'm going to be back. I'm going to be back. Coach, are you worried about all your high school recruits in the early signing class that are all flipping right now? You're ranked number 78 in the country with your recruiting class. He said, no, don't worry about that. It's going to be a heavy portal year for us. That's what we're going to do. Small high school class, big portal class. Are all these things connected? We'll see. This is a very layered situation. But the final result, which, again, kind of thankful, props to UNC for breaking this 30 minutes before we had a show when we were all planning to speak to each other. You're a real one, Bubba. Lawrence, thanks for doing that. Mack Brown, no longer at North Carolina. I'll shut up. Tom, thoughts?
First of all, as soon as I heard the news, I ran and put on my sissy blue hoodie to show my support for you and Tar Heel Nation.
Thank you.
It's more the timing that surprised me than anything. Like I feel like you'd been draping the crepe pretty well these last couple weeks, and even with Max kind of, I'll be back. There was crickets from actually North Carolina saying, oh yeah, he's definitely coming back. And when a coach is saying I'll be back and nobody else at the school tends to tell you what's about to happen. But the timing was weird, but I guess they just wanted to kind of do like a send-off this weekend more than anything as far as, Max tenure. It'll be interesting to see moving forward where they go from here, because this is the first Power 4 gig that's opened, which means right now it is far and away the most attractive job on the market. So do they have somebody kind of lined up already, or are they actually going to go into this open for a search?
I don't know if they have somebody lined up. I don't know if you can have somebody totally lined up because you don't know what other schools are going to open, right? You can maybe think you have somebody lined up, but what happens if like a more attractive job just suddenly opens up? Then maybe the guy you have lined up is no longer in your line. I do think this is a smart move for UNC overall. Mack did a very good job on the whole, but there's no way you could objectively look at the situation and think it was going to get better. I mean, you had Howell and you had Drake May, and you had the results that you did with those guys. I think North Carolina can be better than what Mack Brown had them at. I mean, maybe not a ton better, but I just don't think this was heading in the right direction. Some of the guys that they had signed, who were highly rated coming out, maybe that's our fault for rating them high. Maybe that's Mack and his staff's fault for not developing them. I don't know. You guys kind of take your pick. Some of the same stuff happened at Texas, though, so I kind of know, where I lean on that. Those guys definitely had some pretty special, height, weight, speed measurables coming out. And I think much like we talked about with Kentucky make a move on Mark Stoops yesterday, North Carolina is now far and away the best job on the market. I mean, it's going to have its pick unless something else opens.
Mack Brown was undeniably better than Larry Fedora.
Yes.
And Larry Fedora came in after Butch Davis gave a lot of fireworks, but ultimately we did not see, big time, huge breakthroughs. Mack Brown was the most successful North Carolina head coach since Mack Brown. Like he was.
Maybe they should bring him back for a third time.
But I think that what is undeniable is that even with that being true, he fell short of expectations. The way that the teams would start strong, then kind of crumble at the end, the way that nearly every season had at least one result that was baffling. Like the number of times that this North Carolina football program in the last 6 years lost as a double-digit favorite was far too often.
3-score favorite was like agreed. I mean, the 17 plus was, I think it's about like 6 times in the last 3 years. It just, yeah. I took them off my betting sheet, basically. Like I will not lay 3 scores with Carolina because the chance that they lose the game outright is scary to me.
He raised the floor. He fixed the vibes, which had gotten toxic. Because again, Larry Fedora won 5 games in his last 2 seasons combined. And no one was coming to the games. It was like very, very down bad. And Mack Brown was able to do that. I do think that that's why, Tom, to your point, I do think that Saturday in Kenan Stadium against NC State, it will be more of a thanks for all you've done, gratitude fest, a little bit rather. And honestly, better move than having it be Mack's future hanging in the balance. Now the fans show up to that and they're not frustrated about the future. They want to be able to be there, root for their university, say thank you to Mack Brown, who has made North Carolina more nationally relevant in his 2 stints than at any other time through North Carolina's history. But North Carolina's history is the important part here. North Carolina's history is a 500 program. North Carolina's last ACC championship was in 1980. North Carolina has very, very few like true breakthrough type moments. And oftentimes those highest of highs are always with a ceiling or with somebody ahead of you in order. There is long been a belief, sleeping giant this, sleeping giant that because North Carolina is in a state whose population continues to increase, that the high school talent in the state of North Carolina continues to increase, because North Carolina is the flagship university here, and because you've got the big brand of the University of North Carolina, that North Carolina should strive for better than 500. I don't know that every North Carolina sports fan wants that or cares enough about that. And that's why I'm kind of fascinated for the people that matter. If this is a, who do you want to be? Because there's an example of another basketball school, big air quotes here, basketball school that said, no, we're ready to get serious about this. And they just gave Curt Cignetti a big ass serious deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they, in addition to getting Cignetti and being able to give him the money to bring his staff and in the re-up with the extension, getting his assistants paid in a really big way, like they are investing in the football program and being serious about their football program in a way that shows that they understand that those basketball banners are great. And the fact that all your fans like love the glory days is awesome. But to be at the very highest levels of college sports, if we go through any kind of major shift or major alignment, like forget conference realignment, if there is like, NCAA-wide divisional realignment, you cannot have an unserious football program and expect to get a ticket. And I wonder if that's how this breaks the other way. Because we said power conference jobs aren't opening because of the uncertainty with the House settlement, the potential of $20 million that's going to be coming onto the athletic department budget, revenue sharing, and all these things. Like we'd rather just hang tight. And to be honest, that's why I thought they would stick with Mack Brown, because Mack Brown's going to guide you through this uncertain time. But what if it's the other way? And you say like, no, we need to show that we are serious about our football program. And this is an opportunity for us to go make a serious football hire as the best job available in this coaching cycle. I have to think that's got to be part of the calculus here. That's not sourced. That is speculation, just sort of reading the facts as they're laid on the table.
Also, Chip, I mean, if you sat Mack Brown down, couldn't you say like what direction is this going? Right? Why is this going to get better in the next few years as opposed to worse? I think that's a relevant question. And if he doesn't have a good answer for that, like that's kind of when you pull the plug.
Well, Bud, I like to fix things.
Sure. I covered
That's
a guy.
That is 100% what he would say. He
I-
likes to fix things. He likes to help people get better. He said, I sit up in my office and I get mad at the university and I get mad at like the transfer portal. And then I go down to eat lunch and I start talking to the players and I just want to help them get better. I mean, he's a people person who wears his heart on his sleeve through and through, to the point where he nearly fired himself earlier this season, and then he tried to rehire himself.
Yeah, he fired himself, then he extended himself. He did a whole lot of things to himself this year.
I mean, again, I think that emotion is what makes him who he is and what probably would cloud any real response for your question, Bud, of like, so where is this going? What is the game plan here? Because from a roster building, from a recruiting, from a general trajectory and direction perspective, there wasn't a big pop or a big level up that was very obvious in the near future.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Well, forget the analyzing. Put on your fan hat. Who do you want?
So I would say that 2 weeks ago, like let's start like as local as it is with like the guys that I was living with in Chapel Hill. Number one was John Summerall. And the conversations were, but we don't think we can get him because someone else is going to come in line to jump ahead of you for John Summerall. I would say, and I haven't. First thing I did was answer the phone from Randy Brickley. Second thing I did was jump on here on the Cover 3 podcast. I'll text my old roommates later, but I would assume that that's the most popular name here. I think everyone recognizes from his work at Troy, from having a great season with Tulane, and just his coaching chops, that is the kind of, not the hot coach on the rise who's an offensive whiz kid who had coffee with Sean McVay or high-fived Cliff Kingsbury, but somebody who seems to understand like the full team building, coaching program stuff. And that's what you need. That's the one that's probably the one that I would say would be my answer, just because it would at least give the most encouragement about where this could go, as opposed to the splashy name that you don't really trust, as opposed to somebody with a little bit of home cooking who might be, taking a hometown discount. I think a serious football hire is hiring the most qualified coach that is on the rise. And I think John Summerall probably fits that description.
It's probably the only year in which you're going to have a real shot to get John Summerall.
Geez, well, then that's why you do it.
Right. Like, let's think about the jobs that we think could open this year. Arkansas, UNC is a better job than Arkansas. It's not a P2 job, but the money is within $1 million, I think. And I can coach at UNC for a decade. I'm going to get fired at Arkansas after 5 years, just like every other coach at Arkansas does. That's a one paycheck job, or that's a one contract job. You take it because you're going to get rich. You really can't win there. At least nobody in our lifetime has. So I would rather have UNC than Arkansas. I think I would rather have UNC than Kentucky. Summerall would have to answer that if Kentucky were to open, because obviously he, very tight with Mark Stoops and would know the ins and outs of that job, quite a bit. Now, next year, let's think about what jobs SEC could open. Ole Miss could open, right? I don't think it's super likely, but if you don't think that situation could go south after this year, I got another thing for you. LSU could open. Obviously, they passed on Napier in their own backyard last time. I don't think that's necessarily a bad call, but things seem to be trending up now at Florida, and he just beat you. Are you going to pass on another guy in your backyard this year? So like LSU could open, Ole Miss could open, Auburn could open, and there are so many better jobs in UNC which could open next year. And Tulane's probably going to be good again next year. This is why, if that's the guy you want to get, you had to make this move now, because you're number one right now over some SEC schools. All of the SEC schools which could open next year, unless I'm missing one, are better jobs than Carolina. I think it's going to be up to Summerall if he's the top choice. Like, do you roll the dice and pass on probably $6 million a year guaranteed, 5.5, something like that? That's $30 million for your family. Or do you want to roll the dice and say you can run this thing back at Tulane and get a better job next year? But I bet you Carolina is one of the very few non-P2 jobs that a guy in an American conference, like thinking he can jump to the SEC would actually consider.
We'll find out on Thursday. If Tulane loses, we know that John's already been focused on the UNC job.
If it's not Summerall, who else would you consider?
Oh, buddy, then we wade into some very like grab bag kind of waters, because there are names.
Chadwell guy?
What?
Are you a Chadwell guy? He's from the mountains, right? I mean,
that's where I think you're going. Like, you're playing a little bit too much into the You're playing a little bit too much into just trying to draw connections to the state of North Carolina, to which I would remind you that Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher were born in West Virginia and won national championships in the state of Louisiana, Florida, and Alabama. Like, just, it might be a reason why they would want to come home. That should not be a reason why a university reaches out to you.
Mullen?
Dan Mullen?
Yeah.
That would be a Mack Brown hire. It would be literally taking the same analyst from the same ESPN halftime desk.
Yeah, okay.
Letting him come right back. And like, look, and I do
very different styles of coaching, though.
Very different styles of coaching, but I do not think that would be the Dan Mullen has been so non-aggressive about his pursuit of jobs and so seemingly comfortable with the gig that I'd be concerned. Don't you want a little more hunger in your coaching candidate? Don't you want to know that this is like not somebody who's like, oh, hell yeah, Chapel Hill's awesome. Or do you understand how nice it is to just live in Chapel Hill? And you know what fans do once basketball season starts? They stop paying attention.
I don't disagree with that.
The funniest possible outcome to me, the wouldn't it be hilarious, and it won't happen, would be UNC hires Gus, and then Chip has to root for the putt-putt offense.
Do you know who I was thinking was? Nah, never mind. We should maybe save that. Well, actually, we'll talk about it in Big Game Breakdown. Yeah. Help me put a pin in that, and just help me remember that I'm getting very close to throwing out some slanderous allegations at Texas's offense as it pertains to a clown's mouth. Okay.
Coordinator-wise, do you think coordinator is an option?
Let's see. So Glenn Schumann. I'm sure everybody would just do like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like, okay, how did it work last time? Well, Dan Lanning has built a monster, like that's okay, fine. That sounds good. By the way, the number of people in the Cover 3 tailgate who have suggested who else, Mike Bobo for North Carolina, just continues to be tremendous content through and through. Glenn Schumann comes to mind. Who else would you put on that list?
Like guys who have had multiple years of success in a row. Will Stein in Oregon, I guess, but I don't know how the age thing and he does. I don't know if he has connections that they feel like are necessary. Man, it's hard this year. Like there's not a ton of those dudes. Who else coordinator wise?
Well, so all right. So if they, I would not.
Dion?
I mean, yeah. Are you kidding? If Dion wants to come to the University of North Carolina, absolutely. Like
TJ Fleck?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
Ray Lewis?
No. What about Chip Kelly?
I think Chip is loving the crap out of being an offensive coordinator.
I think so too.
Would you want Barry Odom?
That's a good one. Would Barry want North Carolina?
Could you scoop Manny Diaz?
No.
Okay.
That would be an unbelievable heist.
Yeah.
But I don't see that one going down. Andy Kotelnicki was another one that was brought up in the tailgate. Could work.
Sure, absolutely.
But again, in terms of the head coaching, building out a program, I think that's why the conversation starts a little bit more. Like I would maybe put Barry Odom before Kotelnicki.
What if Dan Mullen's the wrong ESPN analyst? What if Coach Saban's getting itchy?
Oh, you know what? Truthfully, a good part of my personality has been built on just listening to stuff that Nick Saban has said. Like it just rattles around in my skull. I mean, that's what happens when, we start covering college football, like literally right around the time that Saban gets that thing going. Like those are the formative years of us being professionals in this sport and just following that career all the way through. I think I would be able to sit in and I might sit in on every single press conference. I can't quit Saban. Absolutely. You know what? Nick Saban in North Carolina, Nick Saban in North Carolina, Nick Saban to North Carolina. Let's get it.
Is there an NFL guy who played at UNC?
There are several.
Who might make sense? Like somebody coaching?
Let's see. I know Arthur Smith. It's a UNC guy.
Is he what about Clark Lee?
He's not leaving Vandy.
I don't think he's leaving Vandy.
Is Pavia coming back? Because
I'm sure Clark wouldn't mind having his name floated with the job, but I don't think he's leaving Vandy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, if it's the only power conference job open, we're going to have plenty of time to talk about it. Any other final words before we can finally get into big game breakdown?
Where do we rank this job real quickly? Like, is it a top? Like, if you are a coach who has good options, but not like Ohio State level options, you're not going to be the Bama coach. Where do you rank this? So like you think it's like a top 30 place to work, a top 20?
Not.
I'd say, I feel like the landscape on that has shifted because like SEC, Big Ten are so, as far as financials are concerned, are just different right now compared to other jobs. So I think you could look at like a bottom tier Big Ten or SEC job as being more attractive than North Carolina right now. But I would say solidly top 30.
Yeah,
I think so too. Like Carolina's got some money, right? And they also don't have to play the other teams that have all the money. Like that's the thing is coaches are people too. Like they have to kind of think like, where can I try to raise my family? Like there's certain jobs in the SEC and the Big Ten, they're pretty much a one contract job. Like Beaver's going to get extended to South Carolina, but that's about it. Pittman's not going to last long. Mississippi State, the way that stuff's going, like that's going to be a one contract guy most likely. I can coach for like a decade at Carolina, make a lot of money, win a lot of ball games. If I do a good job.
I can make a list of 15 jobs that I can confidently say would rank ahead of the North Carolina job in a vacuum. I can't. It gets really tricky when we're talking about top 20 versus top 30, but I feel very confident that you're not going to get to 35 without throwing North Carolina in there. And if you put North Carolina at 35, it's because you believe they don't care about football. If North Carolina is activated, and this is, God, I'm so sorry for going long on this.
No, it's a good topic.
All right. So North Carolina Athletic Director Bubba Cunningham, when Larry Fedora is fired, there are some people that help arrange for that to happen. Any coach gets fired, you need to raise money for the buyout. I'm not breaking any news or giving any like dirty details there, but it was pretty clear that Mack Brown was the desired candidate to replace Larry Fedora. When Roy Williams retires, Roy's like, and guess what? It's going to be Hubert. We have not seen this athletic director or this staff go in with a clean slate, an open job, and see if they can go make a hire. I've said a lot. I don't get into like the admin circles. I don't drink white wine in the hotel lobby with all these guys, but like I am interested on that level to see what North Carolina in 2024 going to the open market, see what kind of hire they can make, because it's really the first major hire that we've seen them make in the revenue sports. All right. Coming up on the other side, a very special Tuesday edition of Big Game Breakdown, and we're starting Texas A&M. All that and more next. Usually it is Wednesday, but with the holiday travel and a Wednesday locks on deck, well, that means we're doing it now. Big game breakdown. So Saturday night in College Station, Mike Elko's attention will finally be on Texas. And the Aggies will look to bounce back from their loss at Auburn. Texas looking to finish the job. The winner goes to the SEC championship game. Texas A&M never played in the SEC championship game. They have been members dating back to 2012. Texas has never played in the SEC championship game. They've been members since July. So we are going to have something unprecedented coming out of this one way or the other. The Georgia Bulldogs await the winner in Atlanta when they play on December 7th. To have these stakes for this matchup, the renewal of a rivalry that has had so much continued hate, even in the absence of on-field results, it's pretty colossal. So let's talk about the football first. Tom, where do you see this matchup? What are the places in this matchup that stand out to you?
I mean, what is the status of Quinn Ewers, I think, is the primary question here. He had the MRI earlier this week. He's been banged up. I think that plays a large role because outside of that Florida game, in which we could question based on how that game started and with the situation they were in with their third string QB, we can wonder how really interested was Florida even in playing that game. Like, Texas's offense last month has not been great. It hasn't been great since Quinn came back. Outside of that Florida game, even last week against Kentucky, it wasn't anything I would consider to be spectacular. They did score 31 points, but just overall, it wasn't very impressive. And they're going up against this Texas A&M defense, which I wouldn't consider to be elite, but it's still pretty good. How will they be able to form if Quinn Ewers is less than 100%? How long is the leash? Like I've mentioned it on the show the other day, my guarantee is that at some point this season we will see Arch Manning, and it won't just be because Quinn's hurt or it's blowout late in the fourth quarter. I do think he's going to get playing time at some point the way things are trending. Will that happen in this game? Because this is a very important game for both of them, because another loss for either, I think, honestly, if Texas loses with everything that happened over the weekend, I still think they're safe as far as the playoff is concerned, but it's not a guarantee. So it's a must-win spot for both of them to get to Atlanta to give themselves a shot here. But I just don't know which team I feel is particularly great about. And on the Texas A&M side, like, the offense has looked really good at times as they've kind of crisscrossed back and forth between Connor Wegman and Marcel Reed. And now it does seem like it's Reed's job for good. But this is a very good Texas defense that they're facing. And it's not a coincidence that Texas A&M's two worst offensive games by far this season came against Notre Dame and South Carolina. The other two defenses they faced with a front that is on par with the one that they will be facing in this game. Now, granted, one of those games was Wegman, but the other one was Marcel Reed. So how reliable is this A&M offense going to be in this game as far as putting points on the board and giving themselves a chance? Because even if Texas's offense is not at 100% capacity, can you hold them to 17 points? Is that actually feasible? I don't know. So there's a lot of questions about both of these teams for me going into this game.
So my main concerns are A&M doesn't seem to be able to run the football anymore once Moss got hurt.
Yeah.
The O-line, I think, has regressed a little bit. I thought they were going to have real O-line problems this year once the injuries mounted, and they kind of just to steal a Bill Simmons thing, kind of Ewing effect or whatever he calls that thing, Ewing theory.
The Ewing theory, yeah.
Yeah, like they were kind of okay for a couple games once the O-lineman got hurt, but now it seems like that's really a problem. It was a major problem against South Carolina. It was a problem at times against Auburn, even though they scored 40-something points. The run game has not been great. I am very concerned that Sark will scheme guys open in space against the back seven. The front is still really pretty good. But if you neutralize the front, I do think A&M's back seven is particularly vulnerable. And I'm curious to see, Isaiah Bond eats up zone coverage. A&M's probably going to play a lot of zone to try and keep everything in front of them. They're certainly not going to be, crazy tempo. Texas has actually faced this scheme before. If you recall, A&M's hire at offensive coordinator was Colin Klein from Kansas State. So they saw him last year. That was the game that Texas had to start Malik Murphy in. Or did he come in when Ewers got hurt? I thought start, right? Trying to recall here.
Murphy had 2 starts. I can't remember the order, whether he came in for this one. My memory of this is Will Howard throwing an interception in overtime, falling backwards.
Yes. So if I recall, Texas got up big and then kind of like screwed around unnecessarily and allowed Kansas State to get back into the ballgame. We've kind of seen this before. It's a Big 12 games for Texas. I think Texas is the right side here because I think they're better in the aggregate along the lines of scrimmage, particularly on the offensive line. I think their O-line is a lot better than what A&M has. But, I mean, what road games have we seen Texas play well in this year? They almost lost to Vandy, and they did not dominate Arkansas. That is true. Yeah, they did smoke Michigan. Yeah, that's fair. This will be a tough environment to go play in. But you know what? The Irish handled it, and the Irish handled it with some really young offensive tackles and with a new quarterback to that offense. I don't know if I trust A&M.
And the other part of this is they look good on the road against Michigan, but Texas A&M is a better football team than Michigan.
Texas A&M's offense since Missouri has given you mentioned they moved the ball effectively against Auburn, as you mentioned. They had the second half against LSU, the Marcel Reed show. I just don't know what they do really, really well.
I also don't know if Reed sees it. And I think Reed is the right guy because he adds the 11th man in the run game.
Right.
But like we've talked to some defensive coaches who have faced A&M with Reed in there and are like, he should have killed us and didn't. Like he didn't see some of the open guys. So it's kind of a catch-22 for the Aggies because Wegman can't really move very well. And without Moss, the run game really suffers when he's in there. So you want to have Reed because of the threat of the legs. But you know, when they torched LSU and Reed came in and saved the day, we said on the recap show that night, like, look, let's pump the brakes a little bit. He threw 2 passes and they were dimes, but it was still it was 2 balls. So let's see over the course of 60 minutes, you know, can what kind of coverages can you play against this guy? Can you trap this guy? Can you afford to play some coverages that against not a smarter but a more experienced quarterback who has seen stuff before that he would kill you on if you want to go that risky? With Reed, you can do some things because he doesn't make you pay for it.
Yeah, and another part of it too is like Texas hasn't faced a whole lot of mobile quarterbacks of Marcel Reed's caliber. Like they shut down Taylon Green in the Arkansas game. Diego Pavia had more success against them, but that was more like designed runs that Vandy was working on. And even then he wasn't popping a lot of big runs on him. It was mostly just like 4 yards, 4 yards, 4 yards. So like the scrambliness, if things break down, I haven't seen a lot of guys able to take advantage of Texas. And I don't know if that's going to be something Marcel Reed's able to do here, but I do feel like you're saying, because he's not great in the passing game. Their run game is pretty much gone. He's going to have to do that. He's going to have to get off of like, when plays break down, he's going to need to make things happen for them just to keep drives alive, to maybe even put points on the board. And it's going to be interesting to see how Texas handles that.
I mentioned it a little bit Saturday night, but I do feel, Bud, this is your thing, right? Defense is height, weight, speed, and effort.
Generally, I mean, like there's coaching matters a lot too. Oklahoma confused Bama pretty good, but yeah, generally defensive performance is going to track recruiting rankings better than offense. Offense, you can kind of scheme around and coach around a little more.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. There's a lot of defenses that have height, weight, and speed, but you just collectively start to see the groups that play with an edge, the groups that play with like a real fire. And when Texas was just playing with its food offensively against Kentucky, they put that defense in some bad situations, and that defense came up with stops. And that defense was flying off the ball, tackles for loss, big third down stops, jumping all around, getting the sideline back into the game. You force a field goal, then they miss the field goal, and all of a sudden you've got a little bit of juice back. That's where my confidence for Texas lies, because it is certainly not with the offense. I said it earlier, but man, we are veering dangerously close to putt-putt. And I understand that that's always the Steve Sarkisian experience because he's trying to set up the big play. He's trying to get you going this way, so then we're going to throw it this way. It's all about misdirection. It's all about, creating all that open space for your track speed skill players who can then turn it into a huge touchdown. And over the course of an entire game, you hit enough of those, you're going to win, especially when you're paired with that defense. But man, it's hard to trust that group right now going into College Station in a building that is going to be absolutely rocking at night, under the lights like that. Everything that's packed into that makes it very difficult for me to trust Texas's offense just to go and light it up offensively, or even, click or avoid some of the dumbass penalties that a super talented offensive line seems to rack up from time to time. But man, I do trust against this Texas A&M offensive line and against whatever quarterback they put out back there, that it's going to be Collins, that it's going to be like Simmons and Moore coming off the edge. They got some dudes that are playing with a real edge right now. And I think that's the part of this, of all four, offense, defense, Texas A&M, of those four units, I'll take the Longhorns defense as the basis for how I think this is going to go. So
for the chat, and Brett Lehman's asking this, and since he's a longtime listener, I feel like we need to explain. Can you explain putt-putt offense?
Sure. So when you're playing putt-putt, it can help to be a good putter, to be good, but you don't necessarily need to be good, because sometimes you need to be able to rocket it off that little sidewall, or hit the rock and have it bounce down the hole, or maybe you just need to time it just right. And timing is a big part of the putt-putt offense. You got to wait for the windmill to go around. You got to wait for the clown's mouth to open. And then if you hit it into the clown's mouth at the right time, it'll go down the tube and it'll go in the hole. So if you've got the right timing for the right play call, the putt-putt offense leads to touchdowns and explosive plays. But if you don't have the right timing, and if it's not hit just right, it looks ugly and can get really, really frustrating. Now, obviously, the Pete Dye of the putt-putt offense is Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn.
Yes.
Any fan of a Gus Malzahn coach team understands that when you're sitting in the stadium watching this thing go, a lot of times, unless they're just running the ball really effectively, which Gus would honestly rather do, he would rather just be able to ride some workhorse running backs and just be able to go get like 5, 6, 7 yards of carry, wear the defense down. But you set things up. You're like, we're going to run this. We're going to run this. We're going to fake this bubble screen. We're going to do this. And then boom, 60-yard touchdown. It's how you make a national championship game with a converted safety as the quarterback. Because just like you don't need to be an excellent putter or understand a stimp meter to go play well at putt-putt, Nick Marshall can lead you to an SEC championship and a BCS national championship game. So yeah, the putt-putt offense is a little bit derogatory, yes, but I also respect the success that it's had.
So, okay, two things. One, if we end up taking cover 3 on the road a little more, which thanks to y'all's support, I don't know, maybe pretty cool. The Pete Dye River course of Virginia Tech, I feel like we need to really hone in on what's happening with the Hokies in the offseason. I was Googling this. Public course, it's at Virginia Tech, so Hokies. 2, who's the Donald Ross of offenses?
All right.
Or maybe Donald Ross is a defensive coordinator comp, right? It looks easy until you get to those turtleback greens.
A lot of simulated pressures on a Donald Ross course.
It's got to be like a master of like red zone roulette,
Who would be the defensive coordinator for that?
It's Iowa's DC.
Phil Parker.
Yeah. Phil Parker is the Donald Ross. Phil Parker's
the Donald Ross of football coaches.
Yeah, no explosive plays allowed. We're going to win in the red zone. Good fundamentals. Tackling.
Turnovers that are incredibly costly. You think you're playing well.
Really yes. If you screw up it like any time before you get to the grid, you're completely dead because like that they basically give that to you.
Yeah. So any other
Fazio of offenses?
What would you say are the Fazio like tendencies?
Shoot, just like absolutely beautiful golf courses. Like Lincoln Riley, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. I was gonna say like some sort of shiny object offense for sure.
Diamond Creek. There's a couple good ones.
All right. Any other final thoughts on Texas A&M?
I just want to go golfing now.
Okay, so a lot of people in the chat are saying this is just like a dead nut under. But I do worry A&M's run game has sucked recently. And also A&M's tackling has sucked recently. And Texas, their run game has sucked the entire year. So, yes, I understand like the offense has not been great, but the pass rate might be really elevated here to where it's not a total dead nut under game. Maybe a preview for tomorrow? Don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, they're not wrong as a starting position. You can imagine a lot of scores that do end up at 52.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's the same thing with Texas -5.5. I think Texas wins this football game. But you know how hard it is to cover 5.5 sometimes? There's a 28-24 out there that, like, if you're sitting there and you're like, Texas -5.5, under 48.5, I am rolling. And you can lose those both with a game that scripts out exactly as you imagine it and ends 28-24. That's what I would say. So, but there's as what they call derivative markets. Lots of ways that we can get in on this.
Third quarter chip.
Let's go. All right. Coming up on the other side, we continue our look at some of the biggest games coming up with the weekend with the big time game on CBS, which features Notre Dame headed to Los Angeles to play USC. All that and more next.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast and at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. It'll be your big time on CBS game as top 5 Notre Dame hits the road to play USC. Now the Trojans, thanks to some gritty late night heroics, are already bowl eligible. So that's not a storyline here, but I know. Notre Dame going into the Coliseum. It is a very obvious win and you're in scenario for Notre Dame in the college football playoff. We are playing for the Golden Shillelagh. And this line feels low.
Does it?
Kind of.
I think so.
It almost is giving USC credit for the win over UCLA as opposed to UCLA like getting a demerit for that performance in some ways.
Which is how I grade games, by the way.
Credit or demerit?
Yeah. Let's dig into this. Let's look at all the information. Let's see who's walking out with responsibility for why this result was not as expected.
I mean, I think the line makes sense in that this is only Notre Dame's third actual road game of the season. Like they've played neutral site games, but they've only played on the road twice. Once was the opener against Texas A&M, and once was whatever the hell you want to call the Purdue game. And the other is that if you look at USC this season, they have lost 5 times. They have not lost a single game by 2 scores. They've all been 1-score losses. Their average loss has been 3.8 points per game. That is the second smallest number out there of teams with at least 3 losses. Only Cal has a lower number at minus 3.4. And I do think this is an interesting spot because Notre Dame's played 5 games now without Benjamin Morrison, who's a pretty key part of their defense in that secondary, who is probably a first-round pick. But they've played Georgia Tech, Navy, Florida State, Virginia, and Army. And of those 5, Georgia Tech, which was their first game, was the only one who really did any damage on them through the air as far as yardage-wise, and they actually threw a touchdown. They haven't given up a passing touchdown since. The USC is a little different. USC has receivers that Notre Dame's actually going to have to worry about covering, which is not something they have done without Benjamin Morrison. It has not been a concern for them. Now, on the other side of that, the big change with USC has been the quarterback change. Has it improved things? Let's find out. USC with Miller Moss offense, 2.58 points per drive. With Maeva, 2.24. Success rate, 46% with Moss, 47% with Maeva, so about the same. Explosive play rate, 15% with Moss, 13% with Maeva. Explosive pass rate. Explosive run rate is exactly the same. And then red zone, 4.83 points per red zone possession with Moss, 4 points with Maeva. The offense has gotten worse since they made the change. Now, granted, it's only been 2 games, so maybe it'll improve, but I don't know. Like, I feel like I would have more faith in USC in this game if Miller Moss was their quarterback than I do with Jordan Maeva.
Interesting. Yeah, I think so too. Look, it's not that USC cannot win this game. I think I want to fade the Irish when they would lack motivation or when they're going to face a D-line that can really exploit them. And I don't know that USC's D-line really can. And this is game 12 of the year. Are they really going to be able to get after Riley Leonard? He's playing pretty well, man. The third down stuff would be the concern. Can they convert when they're behind the chains on third down? That has been a bit of an issue for this team. And you could say it's an issue for every team, but relative to their strengths and weaknesses, Notre Dame is not a great team when they're behind the sticks, which kind of makes sense because Leonard is an improved thrower, but his legs are still better than his arm is. So from that standpoint, I get it. I just think Notre Dame is more physical than USC. And yet, think about it, to Tom's point, Penn State, I think, is every bit as good as Notre Dame, although the Donka injury at right tackle, that's a little concerning to me right there because he's going to be out for – that's long-term, I think I read.
Mm-hmm.
But we can at least say that they're similar quality teams. And, USC gave Penn State all they wanted in that ballgame. It was not a walk in the park, and, USC has not quit on Lincoln Riley. So I could see it, but I just don't know. To me, UCLA, with how banged up they were on the offensive line, I don't think that's the same level of test for this USC defense as the Irish are going to be.
Notre Dame continues to be so mean. I don't think that there's a let up, they don't have a conference championship game. Like they don't have this is it. They go out there, they make their final statement, then you get until December 19th or 20th to December 20th or 21st to be able to go and get yourself ready to host a home playoff game. Like this is it seems to me like they will approach this the same way they have approached most of the games that they have played. Well, what do we think? Like Louisville and Georgia Tech? Or maybe the only spots where it hasn't really been crisp. And there have been some penalties and there have been some third down issues that we've highlighted here on the show. But if USC does this and pulls off the upset, then that's a great sign for Lincoln Riley and sort of the fabric of this team. Because I would not say that falls in line with the same group that had just late game errors against Michigan, late game errors against Minnesota. There have been a lot of games this year where being able to close out the victory. Now, if they backdoor this thing and cover the spread, sure, whatever. But my expectation is that if both teams play to character, Notre Dame's able to win this game fairly handily. It's my expectation.
I will say, though, going back to my point earlier, what's the best passing offense Notre Dame has faced in your estimation?
Louisville?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And how many teams this year have actually thrown multiple touchdowns against Notre Dame?
Is it 1 or 0?
It was 1. It was Louisville. Who threw 3 touchdowns in that game and had 264 yards passing. Like, that was the best quarterback. Those were the best receivers they have faced all year. I'm not sitting here saying like USC is going to run rampant on them. It's just, if you look at Notre Dame's overall passing defense numbers, you have to look at them in the context of who they've faced. I mean, they faced 2-option offenses. They faced Florida State, who this year has been horrible in the passing game. They faced Georgia Tech, who actually did throw the ball a bit on them, but is still what you would consider a run-first offense. Stanford, Miami of Ohio, Purdue, Northern Illinois. They have not seen many competent passing attacks, and the best one that they saw had success and kept it close. That was a 31-24 game. 24 is also the most points anybody has scored on Notre Dame at any point this year. I think USC is very much more a live dog than they're getting credit for from a lot of people, and I think that's why the spread is where it is.
This playoff race is going to be real interesting if that happens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is Irish losing or out?
I don't know.
Good chance.
Listen,
It depends on what else happens.
it depends on what else happens. I mean, we're dealing with
Bama beat Auburn. We're
dealing with so much imperfection and mediocrity that we're going to be choosing. Do you know what the final college football playoff? Dang it, we're going to be back here tonight talking. Why am I even spending these minutes talking about this? But like, the final college football playoff spots are 1:55 a.m. at the bar. I mean, like,
she's breathing.
I know. You.
All right. I mean, they're minus 250 to win the ball game. They're minus 650 at FanDuel to make the playoff.
Odds makers are implying that a loss would still make them okay.
Not a lock, but I mean, it's definitely more likely that they are in with a loss than out. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's open it up with some of the time that we've got left. I mean, it is literally all of the 134 FBS teams are playing this week. Biggest spreadsheet I had to make, you're just like, oh,
67 games you got to come up with a line for, right?
67 on
67. Hold on.
It's a clean 67.
Yeah.
I went through the first time, only came up with 66, realized I missed Louisville, Kentucky. My apologies to
you saw Louisville bench Vandegrift?
Yeah.
That they benched Vandegrift. Yeah, they're
going with the young kid.
Yeah.
There's some important injuries this week, man. Like real important ones.
Will I have 45 picks?
I might. I need them. Worked for me last week.
South Carolina-Clemson.
Okay, so I saw an update here. Where are we at? Because this is pretty important. We bet under in Clemson Pitt. That was pretty cakewalky. Took the FCS team against Clemson last week, and it's really just because of all these injuries. So Dabo Swinney says starting left tackle Tristan Lee and left guard Marcus Tate are, quote, trending in a good spot for the South Carolina game, but they'll need to get through 2 physical practices this week in order for Dabo to get a full sense of their statuses. Also, no update on Devontae Capehart, who's their really good D lineman. This is kind of the bowl game. This is kind of your ball game here, guys, because as we heard from our big Spur experts, right? We had McGranahan on in summer school, and they're like, actually, this D line could be like really damn good. And part of it was like, who else in the SEC has really great D lines this year? It was like, maybe South Carolina's gonna be like top couple D line. They're like legitimately good, even in a good SEC year. If they have to play Clemson's backups, they will tear that ass up.
Yep.
All right. Now, if Clemson is the starters in, then it is legitimately, I think, more of a ball game, because South Carolina's offense has looked really good at times, and it's also looked very sketchy at other times. They seem to be peaking at the right time, but that's kind of the game. Like, if you don't have your starting left tackle and your starting left guard, they've looked real sketch for long stretches without those guys.
Can't run the ball well. Can't, it's a good thing that Cade Klubnik's got some scootability, because he gonna need to run with Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart, and the rest of that crew bearing down on him. Man, it's a massive game. I think that Clemson's defense. Remember, it was, I guess, because the Citadel game would have brought him back. Woody Woodaz was out for a little bit with an injury. Sammy Brown, who's good, had to get in there.
Woodaz getting better each day, still not 100% as he recovers from a pretty nasty thigh/calf bruise.
Yeah,
How do you have a thigh and calf bruise?
Someone's
Like a
helmet.
car accident injury.
Oh, yeah.
Like your thigh and your calf are bruised?
I mean, maybe you're never mind.
I mean, the point is, Lenora Sellers, I would have as much of your very good linebackers out there who are like smart and experienced and able to spy and close with great speed and intention. I mean, big game for Clemson's back seven going up against Sellers. And I think that group is good when they're 100% healthy.
His last 5 games, so since the Alabama loss, as a passer, nothing about his rushing. Lenora Sellers, 1,317 yards, 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 184.8 passing efficiency, a 68% completion rate, and 10.3 yards per attempt. Some of that is skewed by Wofford, but only some.
Yeah. Sellers is awesome.
He has been, yeah. And then you look on the other side, it's like, what version of Cade Klubnik do we get? Because he has been tremendous at beating up on bad teams, but he struggled against Georgia. Like, that's a hard game to forget, going back to how poorly he played in that game.
I was told he was fixed completely, Tom.
Yeah, he also struggled against Louisville and Virginia Tech. So I don't know. What version do we get? Because this is a very good defensive line we're going to see. They bring pressure. Cade Klubnik, to this point, when pressured, has shown a bit to be desired. How does he handle that?
Kansas State at Iowa State, Farmageddon. I saw Isaac in here earlier. Can we get any? Isaac is still here. Let's get some Farmageddon thoughts.
I would say Avery Johnson finally looks actually healthy, and I don't know, like, is Kansas State playing like the best team in the Big 12 over the last week? Maybe it's a different team in their state, but they looked really good last week. And I know it's Cincinnati, and Cincinnati's not great, but Cincinnati's not like a bottom 50 team in the country, So, I mean, that's a hard game for Iowa State to go play.
You know what this game's going to come down to? This is real hard-hitting analysis.
You can say red zone
for a Big 10 football game.
Big 12.
Big 12. Nope, turnovers. Simple
so
as that.
If Kansas State wins this, right, and BYU and Arizona State win, then no other results matter, and it's just Arizona State, BYU?
Believe so. I don't know. There's a billion permutations. I can't remember what they all were.
There's actually just 256, Tom.
Well, what's the difference between 256 and a billion?
So Baylor beating Kansas doesn't matter. Cincinnati beating Houston doesn't matter in that permutation.
Okay.
Well, think about it. So the 4 teams at the top all have 2 losses.
I'm trying to get Colorado in without either Arizona State or BYU losing. So I'm just clicking left and right and just seeing. But I don't know that there actually is one.
Kansas State this year, all right, there have been 4 games in which they have failed to win the turnover battle. Okay. One was their 41-6 win over UT Martin to start the season. So they had a -1 turnover differential in that game and still somehow overcame the Skyhawks. The other 3 were all 3 of their losses: BYU, Houston, and Arizona State. If Kansas State wins the turnover battle, they win. It's really been that simple for them. And I think that's kind of what this game will come down to. If Rocco Becht doesn't take care of the football, Kansas State will win. If Iowa State does its thing where it's not very explosive, but it just kind of churns away at you and then hits a play here and there to keep drives alive, then Iowa State will win. It's really that simple between these 2.
The defense for Iowa State got torched by Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
UCF moved it pretty well on them.
And that's why they need to control the ball on offense.
Yeah. There's like just enough. I mean, obviously Avery Johnson's going to be the bus driver there, but there's just enough, like, also just skill talent around there on that Kansas State offense, where if that Cyclones defense isn't, in position playing well, they could get burned for some explosive plays. keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Iowa State can't win. At this point, I do lean Kansas State.
So do I.
Oh,
They just look better right now.
Yeah. Because UCF ran the ball on them. Kansas ran the ball on them. Even Cincinnati ran the ball on them. It's like, I'm looking at all this. I'm looking at the profile, and you're like, man, last time out, Iowa State's defense had the clamps on those boys.
Totally.
It was Utah. So what's repeatable? That's that seems to me like a big and important question here. Lots of other action elsewhere around the country. What are some of the matchups that you've got your eyes on?
Am I crazy to think that Auburn could beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa?
Nope.
Like, that team doesn't look right.
Correct.
Milroe is getting all over the receiver after the pick six. He did not play well at all. As far as SEC linebackers, Auburn's got some pretty good ones who I think can run with him some. And Bama's defense, Lawson's out for the year now.
As far as SEC linebackers go, I've told you before, Deontay Lawson's one of my favorite in the whole damn conference.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he's out for the rest of the year is a very, very big deal.
Chip, completely agree. I don't think Auburn is great. If they played again, I probably would take A&M, but Bama's variance is just like this. I mean, well, we're $3 today. It's just crazy up and down. If Milroe plays awesome, they win. If he doesn't, then they don't. So I think Auburn has a real chance to go win that game on the road, as crazy as that sounds.
Is the Deontay Lawson injury a big enough one for the committee to care?
Well, if you don't have Deontay Lawson, you can't be in the playoff.
No, I wonder.
Not the same team.
Dude, I've listened to some Bama podcasts and stuff. They want Milroe benched. I'm like, I don't think so. That to me doesn't make a lot of sense. Given what the rest of that offense is. Have you seen what they look like when his legs don't work?
Yeah. Who do you want in there?
Terrible. Simpson.
This is where we got to go back to the 2 years ago Ryan Day conversation, because you are speaking clearly, soundly, and the mental state of the Alabama fan base, of which might include some Alabama beat writers, is not clear or sound right now. I mean, they are spiraling.
It's hard. You got to get used to it, and they're just not used to it.
It's like road losses to unranked teams in a billion games under Nick Saban, 2 road losses to unranked teams under Kalen DeBoer in 1 season, 3.
It would be more acceptable if they were losing to really good teams. If the SEC had a bunch of really awesome teams this year, if they had Georgia's schedule, but they don't. They've got a fairly manageable schedule and have just managed to lose. They lost to Vandy. They lost to Oklahoma, whose season win total for conference games was 3.5, and they're going to win 2, right? Maybe. So have they won 2 conference games yet?
Yeah, that was.
They beat Auburn and they beat Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they're still going to come short of their season win total. So I think that's what makes it less acceptable for Alabama fans. You're losing to teams that are objectively not good.
One of the more interesting games to me this weekend, which also has pretty big implications, is Miami going on the road to Syracuse.
Woo!
Because how many ACC dreams have we seen die in the dome? And it's just they really put their foot on the gas in the fourth quarter, as they are wont to do this season against Wake Forest. But they also messed around with Wake Forest for 3 quarters. And it's just, I feel like Miami is one of those teams where they mess around too damn much. So you go on the road and you're facing that Syracuse team who, I mean, they would love to destroy Miami season. That's probably what Fran Brown's been, yelling at them all freaking week, is we're going to ruin these guys' season, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. It's just going to be really interesting to see. It's one of those spots where it's like, I feel like Miami should win, but I feel like Miami should win every week. And it's just never that easy.
I mean, I think you could throw the ball all over Syracuse. Can Miami get any stops? Don't know.
Kyle McCord legacy game.
There was that kind of sketch game last year. Remember, it was like, oh, it was the going up north, last game of the season, Boston College. Miami handled it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do think athletically they are a decent mismatch for Cuse.
Kyle McCord had 333 first half passing yards last week.
It's a bunch.
It's a lot of yards.
It's a lot of yards. I think he had like 80 of them on 2 plays. It's like, Miami can't stop Oronde Gadsden.
That could be a serious problem.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not.
Total number of combined touchdowns and interceptions in this football game. Under 10.5.
Yes. There's going to be a lot of, both of them are going to have like 4 touchdowns, 2 interception stat lines.
That's exactly where I was. I was like, this seems like both Kyle McCord and Cam Ward are both going to be throwing a lot of scores, both ways, just to everybody. Red zone INTs are the only way this doesn't go over.
Do either of you think Michigan has a shot in hell?
Okay, so do we buy this Will Johnson maybe not thing?
No, I don't think he's playing.
Agreed. Do we think Loveland's going to play?
Yes.
I don't know, but I think there's a far more likely chance Loveland plays than Will Johnson.
I think Michigan has a shot. Not a good one, but a shot. Only because, look, Ohio State moved the ball in Indiana pretty decently, and Michigan's got a lot better personnel up front. This is the stiffest test for this Ohio State offensive line, which is pretty banged up since the Penn State game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, everything else, just kind of ignore it, right? But there is some chance they just ugly this thing up to the max and get some turnovers, and it's not completely out of the realm of possibility, but to me it's pretty unlikely.
I will say, if they get the chance to run it up, based on what we saw Ryan Day do against Indiana, based on the 3-game losing streak, they will run it up. So I might take an Ohio State alt line.
The only thing is, do you leave your guys in with Oregon on deck?
Yes.
Because to me, if Oregon loses the Big Ten title game, they drop to the 5 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Although some Irish fans think they're locked into the 5, that happens, and I do not agree with that at all. If Ohio State loses that, then their road becomes very tough, because I'm not entirely sure that Ohio State is locked into the 5 if they lose.
I think that it would be foolish to make any coaching decision based on the prediction of the whims of a selection committee when it comes to seeding 5 through 8. I think Ohio State is a lock to host. That's about all you can say.
They're locked to host for sure.
Yeah.
You don't think Oregon is a lock to be 5 if they lose the Big Ten title game?
They'll be 5 if they lose.
Right. I think
as long as they beat Washington, we got to assume they beat Washington first.
My point is, I don't know that I'm leaving my starters in. I'm conscious of the Jordan Travis stuff with Oregon on deck. Because Oregon's had bye week and then Washington?
Michigan winning would be hilarious.
Oh my God.
It would be very hilarious, yes.
Yeah.
The letdown from beating Indiana, and you just overlook Michigan. Yeah. Oops, forgot them.
Gosh. We got so hyped up because, Karma's a player on the Chiefs and all that. I don't want to wade too far into the waters there, but that little, we're going to fake a victory formation, but it's really a quarterback sneak. You didn't need to do that. Does that make you feel good, Ryan? That make you feel like a big boy?
Like a parlay.
Feel like a big boy, like when you bullied Lou Holtz? You bully Lou Holtz and you do a quarterback sneak out of the victory formation because you're a big boy?
Needed 2 tries, by the way. Don't forget that. Here's a question for you, just galaxy brain game theorying it up. Georgia's already clinched a spot in Atlanta. If you're Kirby, you understand that the only way you're getting a first-round bye is if you win the SEC. Do you kind of just take this week off against Georgia Tech?
Georgia has taken the week off against Georgia Tech so many times, but yet they tend to have just enough to make sure it's not an outright loss. I mean, I don't have the series history pulled up in front of me, but that's like anecdotally reaching into my, wait. What? I don't want to put this on a screen. I've got too much football going on right now. And then you've got to go and you've got to watch Georgia Tech because it's close. And then all of a sudden, Georgia finds a way to win.
Last year was an 8-point game.
Yeah.
But yeah, the prior seasons for the most part were all very, very blowouty.
So I would not try. I would, especially with the way that this Georgia team even messed around with UMass. Like you can't send any message of let up or let down. It's got to be handle business, eliminate their will to compete, yada, yada, all that stuff.
There's no way. If Georgia loses Georgia Tech and loses the SEC title game, are they out?
I would imagine so.
Well, then you really can't afford to mail this in, right? Like you got to give it real effort.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. You may call the dogs off, no pun intended, but I'll take it if you're up big. But I mean, that's probably a consideration. Like these coaches have to kind of start modeling this stuff out a little bit. Like, wait a second, we do need to win this. And Georgia Tech, like they play pretty hard. Now they get lucky sometimes, but they definitely play hard.
All right. Washington, no chance.
No, they have a chance.
I think they have a chance too.
They had a bye last week, just like Oregon did, which means they've had an extra week to get ready for this game. They've got a chance.
Their home road splits obviously have been problematic, but the
Mhm.
road games have mostly been away from the Pacific time zone.
Across the country. Yep.
This will be a little bit different, but
This is a short flight.
yeah. All right. Whew. Anything else? Got locks tomorrow. Any other matchup points?
Underrated game that I do want to watch. I think it's going to be really fun, although it doesn't really impact the conference race in any way. Kansas Baylor.
Yeah, I got that
It's going to be a
one.
hell of a watch. Like that'll make the watch guide.
It's
Nobody
again.
wants to see the Jayhawks in the playoffs. Hottest team in the country.
Did you see the thing about the Jayhawks punter? His family flew in from, I think, Australia, and Colorado did not force a single punt.
We talked about it on the reaction show. It's the most amazing thing. Is that guy?
But they got a free trip to not a free trip, but they got a nice trip to Kansas City in the winter. What more could you ask for?
Barbecue.
Yeah.
Yeah. The sunny Kansas City in the winter for a couple hours a day.
Yeah. Like you see it when the cloud moves for a couple seconds and there's the sun and you're like, wow, and then it's gone again. Like it's out right now. I'll say goodbye to it because it's going away soon.
All right. We will be back Wednesday. Oh, excuse me.
Tonight.
We'll be back tonight. That's right. So, ranking show, the television show for the College Football Playoff Invitational television show is going to begin at 8:00. We expect we'll have the rankings 8:15, 8:20. So let's say 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll go live here at youtube.com/cover3. Our reaction to the new rankings and so much more. Then Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, we are going to be giving you our rivalry week locks. So make sure you come and hang out, youtube.com/cover3. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip _Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.